Good evening. We are very pleased to have Kim Ridley here with us tonight to give a really fun presentation on how Heritage Trust lands have sort of influenced or inspired some of her work, both as an author and as an educator, science writer, children's author. Welcome, Kim. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Chrissy. Thank you. And I'm glad to share this space and my love of Blue Hill Heritage Trust lands. I've lived here. My husband Tom Curry and I have lived here for 27 years. And these places, 100 Acre Wood and the mountain, Peters Brook, on, are such treasures to us, inspire both of us. And I'm calling my presentation an invitation to wonder. And I really think about that on several levels. The first is that I see these and experience the trust trails and properties as invitations to that experience of wonder. We always see something extraordinary or interesting, like this incredible yellow spotted salamander, one of the subjects of one of my children's books. And we make pilgrimages every year. I do, and can drag my husband along to some of the properties when the rhodora is blooming in 100 Acre Woods, or to look at the ice formations at Peters Brook. So that's the experience I always have and find wonder out in the natural world. And I'm really grateful that these places exist, places we can visit over and over and share with others. So I'd like to bring you on kind of a virtual field trip tonight. So we'll get started. Let's see if I can now. I'm trying to advance. I can't seem to advance my screen here. Whoops. Okay, let's see. There we go. So I write for children and adults. But I talk tonight particularly about the kids' books I'm working on, and I call them Wetlands Trilogy. The Secret Pool, which came out in 2012, about vernal pools, The Secret Stream, which is about Secret Bay rather, which is about estuaries, and The Secret Stream, which is brand new, it just came out in October. So when I talk about wonder, I was telling a friend a couple of weeks ago, I said, I really feel that wonder is an essential experience. And what I want to do in my work is incite wonder. And he said, well, you can't incite wonder, because wonder is childlike, it's naive, it's soft. And I beg to differ. I really feel that the experience of wonder and awe is a human birthright, and a very powerful, necessary, and potentially world-changing experience. And I always think of the words of my heroine, Rachel Carson, who I first learned about as a girl growing up in southern Maine. And her wish for children was to be given a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantment of later years, the preoccupation with things that are artificial, and the alienation from the sources of our strength. So I would really argue that wonder is a survival skill. So, oops, my computer is misbehaving a little bit in terms of advancing the screen. Is this meeting being pre-recorded? Is that message showing up on your screen or not? Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. So, as I mentioned, we've lived here almost 30 years. I grew up in Maine, 10 generations from York County. And my childhood hangouts were the woods behind my parents' house. And when I wasn't in the woods exploring places, I had kind of a magical pool behind my folks' house that I like to explore. When I wasn't there, I was at the library, and my father brought us to the Springville Public Library every week. And that's where that really inspired my love of learning and fed my curiosity. I went on to the University of Maine, got a degree in journalism, and moved to Boston a few years later and earned a master's degree in science journalism. So it was really I've written for adults about natural history and science for more than 30 years. I started writing for kids about a decade ago. And again, it's to share that sense of wonder and the world around us. So here we are at 100 Acre Wood. It looks, it's kind of leafless, but these pools, it's an amazing place for vernal pools. And you can see on closer look, this is a picture I took last spring. On the right, these are spotted salamander eggs. So these places, temporary pools in the woods, are hopping with life. And you can hear those, I hope you can hear those wood frogs singing. Okay. So these little temporary pools in the woods are nurseries for incredible animals, these wood frogs, yellow spotted salamanders, and these fairy shrimp, which are also amazing creatures. They're about the size of a paper clip. So all three of these creatures depend on vernal pools to complete their life cycles. They use these temporary puddles in the woods to lay their eggs. And they are, you can get a good look at them at 100 Acre Wood. So a moment for each of these creatures. This is a female wood frog. They are literally the world's coolest frog. They live farther north than any frog, all the way up to Alaska. And they survive the winter by crawling under a thin blanket of leaves and turning into frogsicles. So they almost freeze solid. They have just a little bit of glycol, a little bit of antifreeze in their blood. So when you're out hiking on one of the trails, right now, obviously they're under a nice blanket of snow, but they're very common, and all around us are these incredible frogs. Come late March, it's usually in late March now or early April, when the nighttime temperatures get around 40 degrees and it rains, these frogs completely thaw out, and the males, they come back to life. So all winter long, their hearts aren't beating, they're not breathing, but literally they're resurrected in the spring and come back to life. And scientists still can't figure out how they do it. It's quite a mystery. So they will go right to vernal pools to lay their eggs. And wood frog eggs, if you want to go out looking next spring, they're kind of rounded clusters. They're small at first, but they will swell to about the size of a softball. So they're kind of rounded clusters, and the eggs themselves are kind of bubbly looking. So they look like rounded bubbles floating on the surface of a vernal pool. The spotted salamander eggs that you saw a couple of images ago, the egg masses are more kidney shaped, kind of kidney bean shaped, and they have a clear membrane on the outside. They're quite smooth looking. So, and this is the best way to find a vernal pool if you want to look on your property, or you're out on, there are a lot of vernal pools on different trust properties, is to listen for these wood frogs in April. This is the larva of a yellow spotted salamander. These guys are about the size of a pushpin, and they're quite amazing looking. So yellow spotted salamanders are nocturnal. They only come out, they live below ground. They only come out typically during it's called big night. It's actually a series of nights in the spring, again, when the air temperature gets above 40 degrees and it's raining, to migrate to their vernal pools to spawn. So this is what the young, the larvae look like. And you can see it kind of looks like it's wearing a headdress. Those are its gills. And I've had the opportunity to see them a few times. They're quite amazing looking. These guys, you won't find them in vernal pools until probably late June at the earliest around here. They're in a race against time. They have to grow lungs and legs before the pools dry up, or they'll perish. But if you want to take your kids or grandkids out looking for them early summer, and look in the leaf litter. And a really great way to look at see what's in a vernal pool, there are lots of interesting aquatic insects, is to take a white basin or a frisbee and just scoop up some of the leaves and look in something with a white background, scoop up some of the leaves and water. It's a really fun thing to do. And these are fairy shrimp. They're over 400 million years old. They've been around a long time. I've seen them in a pool in Sedgwick. And if you see these in a vernal pool on a hike or on your property, you have a significant vernal pool. So there are potentially protections around that pool. And what's really interesting, what really fascinated me and prompted me to write The Secret Pool, I've known about vernal pools for quite a while, is what I learned is that they really help feed the entire forest by turning fallen leaves and melted rainwater and snow into new life, into fungi and insects. So they have these incredible food webs, and they really power the whole forest ecosystem by recycling these dead leaves into insects and larvae and new life. Other creatures will visit vernal pools. Moose sometimes will visit them to graze. They're the first places that thaw out in the spring, so there's new foliage to eat. Migratory ducks like wood ducks will visit them. So these little puddles are really an important piece of forest health and connectivity. And that's really what inspired me to write The Secret Pool. And I worked with scientists up at UMaine at the Mitchell Center. So that really got me going. I just wanted people to know about, and kids, about these remarkable places. So this is the opening spread from The Secret Pool. I spent so much time just looking at how the water looks, the creatures, and really imagining what a little pool in the woods would sound like. I didn't want this book to be didactic, like a grandmother lecturing to her child about, here's a vernal pool. I really like to use creative nonfiction in my children's book. So I decided to personify the pool and give the pool its own voice. And you can see it has quite an attitude. Even if you are lucky enough to find me shining on the forest floor on an early spring day, you might mistake me for a puddle, which I most certainly am not. And you probably recognize these beautiful illustrations. They're by Rebecca Ray. Had the great fortune to collaborate with her. You might not know this, but publishers pair you. As an author, I don't get to choose who's going to illustrate my book. So my publisher, Tilbury House, put Rebecca and I together, and it was complete kismet. We were already friends, so we had the good fortune to be paired together. And the other thing about writing a picture book is you have to also think visually. Even though I'm not writing, I'm not doing the illustrations. What are the wetland plants that would be around a vernal pool? What would be the visitors? So Rebecca and I each did our own research, but to make sure that the words and the illustrations were accurate. And then here's a wonderful spread about the pool saying, describing how many forest creatures depend on these places. And I just love this magical illustration of Rebecca's. So really fun collaboration between the Trust and Blue Hill Public Library. A few years ago, they put up a story walk at 100 Acre Wood. So visitors, kids and families could go and learn about vernal pools as they're hiking at 100 Acre Wood. And this was a fun event, time travel. Chrissy and her son, hi. We had a fun vernal pool visit with The Secret Pool at Patten Stream. There's a beautiful vernal pool at Patten Stream. So here we are with the White Basin looking at some cool critters and Chrissy's kids just a few years ago. And here we are having a closer look at some of the amphibian eggs in the pool. And that was super fun. To me, the big joy of writing kids' books and being inspired at these wild places that the Trust had protected is to be able to share it with young people. I mean, that's the biggest gift in all of this. It's fun to write a book, but this is the best part right here. And the work and kind of the writing I do and discoveries I make on the trails ripple out. I travel all over Maine, working in classrooms, mostly rural schools, although I've been to urban schools. I do author visits. I teach about the creatures I write about, and I also lead nonfiction workshops. And this was a fun one with the Secret Pool in Bucksport a few years ago. So kids learn about the creatures and then do their own writing. And I love what happens, the magic of that. So it's kind of a step beyond like, okay, a quick visit or a quick field trip. The kids are really learning about these organisms, and then they themselves write their own nonfiction stories. And here's an example. This was a visit at Pematic last year. We were studying vernal pool creatures, and Caroline wrote a little story, a wood frog peeking out of leaves, making sure that there are no predators. So kids, again, are incorporating art and creativity and writing, and learning about the world around us. Snow's Cove Preserve, great place to see horseshoe crabs. And part of the inspiration for my next book, The Secret Bay. So this is a book about estuaries, and I'm really interested in the Bagaduce River. So a place that helped inspire this book, and a place I want to get to know better. And here's a spread from The Secret Bay. And what was kind of funny about this is we think about all the creatures and the food webs at these different magical places, and who hasn't been bitten by mosquitoes. So I decided that they needed their own place in the book, and making the point, and through Rebecca's beautiful illustration, that the insects are bird food, and again, part of the food web. So I always try to, I love it at school assemblies. I ask kids, it's like, who in this room has ever been bitten by a mosquito? And they're like, me. And you know, mosquitoes, we talk about how we're part of the food web in feeding the mosquitoes. So that's fun. And here's another school program. We are writing about estuaries and animals in the estuaries. And I don't know if you can see, there's a photograph. It's a black background on the desk, kind of rainbow colored. That's a lobster larva. So we do a lot of work with lobster larvae, which live in our estuaries. Peters Brook, I was telling Chrissy before we got started, I love Peters Brook, and especially the wildflowers. I've never seen painted trilliums any other place, as well as trilling arbutus mayflowers are up on the bank above Peters Brook. So Peters Brook is a place I've been thinking of writing about for a long time. After the secret pool and the secret bay, I was thinking about the forest, and then I thought streams. So I started spending a lot of time at Peters Brook, including sticking my feet in the water. And this is where I started falling in love with insects. And what's not to love about this gorgeous creature? This photograph was taken by Josh Fecteau, who's an amazing naturalist and photographer down in southern Maine. This is, you may know, it's an ebony jewel wings damselfly. They are exquisite. The wings are velvety. They're probably close to a couple inches long. And there was the biggest hatch of them at Peters Brook this past summer. They were just up above the waterfall area and completely mesmerizing. So I started to think about stream insects and particularly aquatic invertebrates, which brings me to Patten Stream. Patten Stream was the first place, gosh, this was years ago, at least 10 years ago, probably more, where the trust sponsored an aquatic insect workshop. And it was so much fun. There was somebody there with a net and just pulling up all of these caddisfly larvae and dragonfly nymphs and helgramites, which bite. But I think that's really kind of where the seed got planted. And one of the things I also love about Patten Stream, it's another one of my annual or Blue Hill Heritage Trust pilgrimage spots, is to see this gorgeous cardinal flower, which again, I don't think I've seen it blooming anywhere else around here. Perhaps you have, but I treasure being able to go and see that. So now I'd like to take you kind of on a mini field trip. I'm hoping to get this to work. This is a video I made initially of little tadpoles, but something, when I looked at it, I was filming tadpoles, but just had a look at this and see if you see anything else moving.
Looks like those little stacks of sticks are moving like snails.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So I didn't notice that the first time, but when I looked at the video, exactly, Chrissy. So these are actually the larvae of caddisflies. So inside these stacks of plant material are, they look like hairless caterpillars. They're kind of little skinny white hairless caterpillars. Those are the larvae of caddisflies. And what they do, they live in vernal pools, streams, ponds, lakes, typically places with high water quality. They build cases around their bodies to camouflage themselves and also protect themselves from predators. My poor husband, Tom, I just became so enamored and obsessed with these insects. There are over 1,100 kinds around the world. Most of them build cases. The way they do it, each species uses a different combination of materials. They make silk that stays sticky in water and it's stretchy. It's kind of like double-sided tape. And they vary. I can put a video up in the chat or send it to you, Chrissy, if you want to share it. There's a great little PBS video of a close-up of a caddisfly larva building its case. And they are so deliberate. And to me, it's such a vivid illustration of how the tiniest creatures have sentience and make choices and create these beautiful, beautiful structures. So the larvae will build these cases. They'll live in them for up to a couple of years underwater, seal themselves in, pupate, and then in the spring, or actually some come out in the winter, they emerge as winged adults. And they kind of look like moths with skinny wings. They're actually closely related to moths. And they're named caddisflies after peddlers in Elizabethan England who sold ribbons and sewing notions and attached them to their jackets. So they're just completely marvelous. And what they do is they will graze, they're shredders. They shred up leaves in the bottom of vernal pools and streams. What they're doing is eating the fungi that coat the leaves. So they really help to get the food web going in vernal pools and streams. And I just think they're extraordinary. There's another, I think I've got another one here. Yeah. Here's another one that this one lives in a stream, and you can see the head is down kind of in the bottom right. You can see its head and little feet. And this particular species uses freshwater snail shells. And again, they are extraordinary. They're engineers. And by the way, scientists are studying caddisfly larva silk to use to replace staples in surgery, because the silk, to use like stitches inside to emulate it. So it would be like biomedical engineers. So this is kind of a miracle material that may someday, if humans can figure out how to make it, would replace surgical staples inside the body. And that whole field, by the way, there's an interesting field called biomimicry, in which scientists are asking what would nature do to solve all kinds of problems, from medical problems to structural issues, housing, transportation. So I think, my joy is really finding wonder in unexpected places. And every time I set foot on a trail in the trust, it's a place I feel I can return. And it's interesting when I go for walks there, or often go with my husband, Tom, these trails become layered in memory. So we go to 100 Acre Wood a lot because it's in our town, Brooklyn, and we love it. And we'll say, oh, here's the place where we saw the palm warblers, that day in April. Or, here's the place where we saw ermine tracks in the snow. So these, I feel it's such a gift to have these places, and also that they're quieter, they're inland places. Who doesn't we love the shore around here. And of course we love visiting the shore, but there's nothing like a walk in the woods. And these places are so intimate, where we can quiet down, slow down, observe. And I think that's also a profound gift to our kids. And I think about this every time I work with children. I'll be traveling around the state this summer or the spring doing school visits with the Secret Stream. So all of my books start with observation, with questions, with curiosity. I work with scientists to make sure everything is accurate. And I really want to do justice to these beautiful places and wondrous beings around us. So the trails that the Trust provides and the lands, just knowing these lands are here and they're protected and there's so much more to discover of who lives on them, really feels like a profound gift, and it really does nurture my work and my well-being. So I'm very, very grateful. And here's a peek inside the Secret Stream. And one thing you might notice are those trilliums, different species of trilliums, but certainly inspired by the trilliums at Peters Brook, as well as these yellow warblers, which do nest along streams and I've seen on trust properties. So my new book, The Secret Stream, again, the stream is personified. Kaboom, my life begins when gray-bellied clouds fling down rain that seeps underground through soil and stones, filling the earth's deep, dark pockets until out I spill from a spring in the heart of the forest. So let me tell you, every time I go to Peters Brook, Patten Stream, I'm walking upstream as far as I can, and thinking of these lines which were inspired by these places. So, and here's something super fun that I did in December. This was my first little program with the Secret Stream. So I wanted to share the wonders of caddisfly larvae with children. So we made Christmas ornaments, taking empty toilet paper tubes and tape and felt leaves and pipe cleaners and tissue paper. And we made caddisfly larva Christmas ornaments. So I did a little presentation about these creatures, and then the kids made the ornaments. And one night, this was at Blue Hill, but I also did this program at the Brooklyn Library, and one little girl who's 7, I think, made her ornament, and she said, I want to take her on the road with me. She said, I think I'll name her Jane Goodall. So that makes me really excited for the future. So really the kind of focus of what it comes down to for me and my work, observing nature and writing, it comes back to Mary Oliver, instructions for living a life, pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. And I think that's really an important gift to share with kids. It's really, you don't have to be writing books, but a really simple way to share what's happening. It's fun to go out. I do this with our godchildren. It's like, let's get our binoculars, our loop, our notebook, and our pencil, and we go out rambling around. And here's a wonder practice. I do this with kids all the time. To take your notebook and your pencil, your kids, your grandkids, and just these 3 questions. I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me of. And this is really a fun thing to do for families, to jot down observations in a nature journal. And then I've worked with kids who've created poems, who've created stories, and their own nonfiction book. So it's fun to have a little wonder practice. And I hope this has inspired all of you to think about when you're out on the trails with your kids, your grandkids, to take a closer look and share something that you've seen and witnessed. And I wanted to close with this idea, the power of wonder and the invitation. This is from my book, Wild Design, which is a book that came out last year for adults about design in the natural worlds. Let's see. Each of us, we talk about obviously climate change and everything that's happening and loss of species and how hard that is. How do we hold that? What do we do about it? How do we live with it? I just wanted to read you a tiny bit from Wild Design. Each of us has a choice. It begins with deciding to pause Anytime we stop, even briefly, to observe a tree outside or a spider's intricate web or snowflakes caught on our jacket sleeve, any bit of nature, a slight shift happens. We reconnect with the world around us. If we share the everyday marvels we notice with one another, the effect multiplies. Imagine this happening many millions of times a day. Who knows what might transpire? Change for better or worse is cumulative. The more of us who get to know and appreciate the brilliance of our other than human neighbors, the greater the chances that our collective sense of wonder will deepen. May we grow in wonder for our home planet, and may this inspire us to act in our own small ways on its behalf. And I really appreciate what the Trust is doing. Thanks.